What's going on, guys? You already know who it is, man. It is your boy, Jerry Fit, and we are back to react with what's new on the tube, man. We got another banger, man. Infographics show. Insane science experiments that went horribly wrong, bro. Hey, man, you guys been fucking with the storytelling kind of videos where it's like they give you, like, it's like a topic, and then there's a bunch of scenarios. That was crazy. So, yeah, we're going to try to jump in on these, trying to get a hold on these, man. Infographics been dropping bangers, man. Hey, man, I'm trying to get you guys on these, man. I know you guys like them, so we're just going to keep reacting to them and running up these videos, bro. You guys already know the drill, man. If you want me to react to anything, bro, leave them in the comments, bro. Send me videos to react to so I can put them out for you guys, man. I appreciate the support that you've been showing me. 80 subs, bro. We've been posting for only about a month now. But, hey, man, we're posting every day and we're grinding, so I appreciate you guys showing love, man. We're going to just jump into this video, bro. It's about 20 minutes, so, yeah, get comfortable.
The Soviet science.
Get your snacks, your popcorn, do whatever you got to do, man.
The university building that transformed into a sadistic prison.
What?
And the scientific screwdriver accident that caused one of the most painful deaths in history. And that is just the beginning. Dust off your lab coats and grab your goggles. We're going to need them.
We're all my science nerds, man.
Show. Insane science experiments that went horribly wrong. Number 10. We begin our journey into the horrifying world of mad science with Carl August Weinhold, a self-styled scientist who wanted to raise the dead in the early 1800s, but reanimation wasn't even the weirdest thing on his resume.
That's crazy.
His fellow scientists at the time thought he was a total creep for his, quote, revolutionary plan to end poverty. He wanted to surgically clamp down every poor man's foreskin to stop them from having more poor kids.
What?
But he wasn't just a menace to the leaders of the poor. He had it out for cats, too. He became obsessed with galvanic electric shocks inspired by Luigi Galvani, an Italian scientist who discovered in 1780 that frogs' legs would twitch when zapped with electricity. Weinhold took that discovery and he ran with it straight into the uncanny valley of scientific horror. Carl removed the spinal cord of a deceased cat, replacing it with a mix of copper and zinc, essentially turning the kitty corpse into a furry little
No
dog.
way,
And he
dude.
put an electrical
No
shock
way this shit
into
works.
its nature and claimed that it was returned to life, hobbling around the room until he turned off the juice. Scientists roundly agreed that Weinhold made that up, seeing as even his contemporaries in the field thought he lived in a fantasy world, and we are feeling pretty eager to leave Weinhold's mind as quickly as we can. Number 9. Surprisingly,
That's some
there's
crazy
a lot of
shit,
scientists
man.
throughout history who wanted to test whether a human head could be revived by pumping new blood into it, and the actual experiments were somehow even freakier.
How do you,
than
what?
It all started
Bro,
in
who
France.
agrees with that shit, man? Pumping in, like, dude, they have to, like, get the consent of the family to do that shit, right? Like, this is crazy, man.
Where scientists began to ponder just how long a human head survived after being sliced from its shoulders. And one of those scientists was Dr. Jean-Baptiste Vincent Laborde. Back in 1884,
man, French gotta
was
relax.
passionate about science. He was ready to put his own body on the line for it as a member of a social group called the Society
Respect,
of
though. Dude, if he's willing to go out about it,
Some
then...
of his best friends cut up and studied his body when he died. And even before he
Respect.
died, he was eager to give that treatment to other people, specifically the severed heads of executed criminals. First came a murderer named Campi. His head was brought to Dr. Laborde an hour after he was
What?
killed, and the doctor pumped blood through it. The results were unimpressive. Laborde blamed that on the fact that the head had taken too long to be delivered after Campi was given the chop. His next subject was a freshly severed criminal head belonging to a man named Gagne, delivered 7 minutes after execution. This time, Laborde went full mad scientist. He connected the head to the still pumping carotid artery of a living dog.
Nah, bro.
To contract and the jaws to snap shut.
I'm
It was
tweaking.
undeniably pretty nasty, but Laborde looked like a member of Greenpeace compared to his
Bro, I'm
friend
actually
colleague,
tweaking.
Dr. Paul Loya. He experimented on
You guys know I'm bad with blood, man.
vital signs by building his own miniature guillotine and using
What?
hundreds of dogs. With a real scientific
Bro, not the dogs, man.
Expand until the 1920s, when Soviet
Why they keep
scientists
fucking
said
up with the
Rudolf
dogs,
Volker
man?
invented a blood pumping machine that he called the autojector. With the help of some anticoagulant drugs, he used the autojector to keep a dog's head alive for 3 hours. The proto-pooch responded to stimuli and even ate food placed into its mouth, which promptly fell out the other end. But that is nowhere near the weirdest.
So they said it worked, though?
The proto-pooch responded to stimuli and even ate food placed into its mouth, which promptly fell out
That's
the other
crazy.
end. But that is nowhere near the weirdest, freakiest experiment that the Soviets have performed. Number 8. Dr. Ilya Ivanov, to put it bluntly, was a certified freak.
What do you mean by that?
He wasn't concerned with reanimating corpses or messing around with pets. No, Dr. Ivanov wanted to breed the first ever humanzee. And that is exactly what it sounds like. A human chimpanzee hybrid.
No.
This wasn't an attempt to build a race of super soldiers for the Russian military. The real goal behind these bizarre experiments was ideological. The USSR and its allies believed that proving humans and chimps could still interbreed and produce
No,
viable
bro,
offspring
come on, man,
would
stop.
be incontrovertible proof of Darwinian
Stop.
evolution. It would be a win in the culture war when American religious conservatives were pushing back against evolutionary science. So, what was the experimental method for finding
Stop.
out whether humanzees would even work?
Stop.
Well, first Dr. Ivanov and his son headed over to French Guinea to find as many female chimps as possible. Packed in Ivanov's hand luggage was a container of human sperm and an
I'm out. Yep, YouTube. Y'all got it. I think I'm done with this space, man. Y'all got it. Bro. I'm done with this space. I don't think I need to be reacting anymore. I think whatever they're about to say next is... They got it, bro. They got it.
insemination tool. His son was armed with a handgun just in case the chimps decided that they weren't on board with the plan. Despite the ethical nightmare that this plan posed, they actually managed to artificially inseminate 13 chimps, but none of the pregnancies were viable. But before you breathe a sigh of relief, Ivanov decided to flip the
Nah,
switch.
bro,
This
come
time
on,
he tried to
man.
inseminate a human woman with chimp sperm. He first tried asking around hospitals in countries across Africa whether they would be willing to let him secretly impregnate female patients for his chimp experiments. Unsurprisingly, they told him to get lost. Ivanov then returned to Russia and purchased a male chimp called Tarzan in the late 1920s, and now he just needed to find a willing human Jane. And in the twist of the century, Ivanov actually found a Russian woman willing to take part in the experiment. While many questioned her mental state, and understandably so, she reportedly gave full consent. But before Ivanov could move forward with his bizarre plan, tragedy, or divine intervention, depending on how you look at it, struck, with Tarzan dying of a brain hemorrhage in 1929. And
That's
Dr.
crazy.
Ivanov's human Z dreams died with him. Now it's time for an American innovation
Chimps can die from that
somehow
shit, though?
defines
That's crazy.
and tops everything that came before it. Number 7. While the humanzees were a dead end, thankfully, the Russian experimental surgery community never stopped doing weird stuff with
Bro,
dogs.
that's so
In
annoying,
1960,
bro.
Dr. Ivan
Do they still
Denisov
test on
shocked
dogs
and
like
fascinated
this?
the world by creating two-headed dogs. He surgically inserted the heads of puppies onto adult dogs so they would share the same circulatory system. None of these dogs ever lasted more than a month, but this did kick off a terrifyingly named surgical arms race of the Cold War. The American given the task of topping Demikov's double dogs was the Harvard-educated rock star surgeon, Dr. Robert White. His Frankensteinian dream
Why are they
was
trying to do
perfect
this
the
shit?
full head transplant. This involved removing the head of a living being, keeping it alive, and then seamlessly connecting it to another living body so it could then resume normal function.
How do you do
What
that?
could possibly go wrong, right? First, he needed to test that a brain could remain alive without a body. So he began with a small monkey. Bit by bit, he surgically removed the brain. Incredibly,
How do
he
you move it at
succeeded in
pieces
keeping
at a
the brain
time?
alive. So he knew enough to move on to the next stage. Next, in the early 1960s, he needed to know whether a brain could survive in another creature's body. He removed the brain of a dog and connected it to the blood vessels in the neck of another pooch. The brain wouldn't have any control over the second dog, but it would at least remain alive for enough time to satisfy the conditions of the experiment. In 1971, after years of preparation, he did the deed on another unfortunate monkey. He transplanted the head of one monkey onto another
That's
monkey's
crazy.
body. He and other surgeons then did the meticulous work of reconnecting all the major blood vessels. The result was a living and terrified monkey head, capable of responding to
Multitask
stimuli,
reacts, my bad.
even biting Dr. White's finger when he stuck it into the monkey's mouth. The problem was, they didn't have the technology to reconnect the spine, meaning that the monkey was effectively paralyzed below the neck. With its new body doing little more than pumping blood, it died a day and a half after the surgery to
That's
recover.
tough, man.
This also marked the end of Dr. Robert White's serious career as a surgeon, with the general public now viewing him as a kind of monkey Mengele.
That
That is
sucks.
nowhere
That
near
sucks, man, because they literally told him he had to, bro. That's not
the
fair.
most messed up experiment conducted in the US of A. Number 6. In 1932, 600 black men
We already know about
Alabama
this.
got a letter from a locally, historically African-American college.
We already know
Tuskegee
about this.
Institute.
Didn't
The
we
letter
just...
offered them
We
a
had...
special
I'm
one-time
horribly
only free
wrong.
inoculation for black blood.
We reacted to this channel and they talked about it too.
It seemed like a deal that was too good to be true, and that's because it was. These 600 men weren't getting treated for anything.
Fucking
They were already
bullshit.
made unknowing subjects of the Tuskegee syphilis study, one of those infamous and unethical experiments ever performed on U.S. soil. 201 of the 600 black men had a clean bill of health. 399 of them unknowingly suffered from latent syphilis, and the study chose to treat only half of them. Over the next 40 years, they wanted to see the toll that untreated syphilis would take on these people. This meant painful, disfiguring, and debilitating symptoms. And by 1972, when the study ended, around 100 of the people
That's
involved
crazy,
had died.
man.
And the worst part,
I hope they got
penicillin
some
was found to be
reparations or
effective
something,
treatment
man.
for syphilis back in the early 1940s. So the people who were sick could have been treated if the scientists behind the study had told them what they were actually sick with. When the truth came out, they were sued for $10 million for just what a monstrous
Good.
disaster this whole thing had been.
I mean, we already know about this. It's
Experimental
just...
mess had messed with the lives of 600 people. Our next mad scientist worked on over 10,000.
It's just ridiculous.
Number 5. Obviously, finding out that your husband had just been executed in prison for his crimes is always going to be a little surreal. One thing that might make it more surreal is getting a letter from your acclaimed mad scientist, Dr. Leo Stanley, offering to pay 10 grand if you'll let him cut off your husband's man purse. For science, of course. And
I'm
this
sorry?
wasn't
Wait,
uncommon.
what?
It's always going to be a little surreal. Her husband had just been executed in prison for his crimes. Is always going to be a little surreal. One thing that might make it more surreal is getting a letter from your acclaimed mad scientist, Dr. Leo Stanley, offering to pay 10 grand if you will let him cut off your husband's man purse. For science, of course. And this wasn't an uncommon state of affairs, because Dr. Stanley's main drag was performing bizarre experiments on the testicles of American prisoners over the course of the early 20th century. And as a chief surgeon of California's San Quentin prison, he had legions of test subjects with basically no human rights, and Dr. Stanley was having a ball at his new job. He had a theory that the inclination toward crime was rooted in the endocrine disorders, so Stanley hoped that by making adjustments to the testicles of criminals, he could relieve their drive to commit crimes, while also potentially increasing their health and virility.
I'm confused. How is this going to help them when they're dead, though?
Testicle grafting. occasionally with humans, but mainly splicing the testicles of animals like deer, boar, goats, and rams with those of his prisoners. Do we even need to tell you that it didn't reduce the rate at which they committed crimes, or make them any healthier? It's also worth mentioning that Dr. Stanley was also pretty horrifically racist. He was a huge proponent of racial segregation and the pseudoscience of eugenics. It probably
Bro, so you mean to tell me you have a racist chief of surgeon picking on prisoners who have no human rights at all in the first place, spreading that he wants segregation, all this shit, dude. This shit's crazy, fool. This shit crazy.
without saying that those views informed the approach that he had to his 10,000 prison subjects and their unfortunate bits. Let's take a diversion over to a man whose disastrous failed experiment only ended up destroying himself. Number 4. Over the course of his life, Frenchman Franz Reichheld had the nickname the Flying Tailor. But sadly, the insane experiment that ended his life proved that he probably should have been given the nickname the Falling Tailor. Franz was obsessed with aviation, and it was his dream to create a parachute suit for pilots to ensure they'd always have a soft landing.
Dude, that's some like action movie shit. They probably have this shit too, like the CIA or whatever. They probably have some shit like this too, man. So he wasn't even far off, bro. Rest in peace to my guy, man. Bro.
But the Flying Tailor's
He was just ahead of his time.
Scientific. He tested the suit himself, resulting in a broken leg after a fall of 26 feet. But this didn't stop it. For his ultimate experiment, a filmed demonstration in front of a huge crowd in 1912, he was going to jump off of the Eiffel Tower while wearing his new suit. Despite all of his friends trying to talk him out of it, he was committed, and he had faith in his design.
Like, bro, why didn't you test it out, man? Why didn't you test it out before you did some shit like
that? The problem was he really shouldn't have had that faith. He leaped off the tower and fell to his death in front of everyone. One of the earliest human deaths caught on camera.
No way.
Despite the fall only lasting a few seconds, a later autopsy confirmed that he died of a heart attack from sheer terror before he even hit the ground. Anyway,
dude,
let's now take a look at
that's crazy. I mean, at least you can feel it.
In humanity's collective
soul. Bro.
Number 3.
I'm so bad with blood. Like, I'm literally just thinking about, like, having a heart attack in the middle of the air while you're falling to the ground is absolutely nuts.
When diving into the history of insane science experiments that went horribly wrong, you will quickly realize that no branch of science is immune. Biology, physics, chemistry, even psychology have all had their skeletons in the lab closet, and few are as notorious as Philip Zimbardo's 1971 Stanford prison experiment. You've almost definitely heard this study referenced or cited if you've ever been interested in psychology, but there are a lot of crazy facts about it that you probably still don't know, like the fact that this study was actually funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research. They wanted to study antisocial behavior, specifically focusing on conflicts between naval prisoners and guards. With this in mind, the study was founded on a simple question: does cruelty and violence come out of the tendencies and actions of individual people, or do the roles and power structures we exist inside dictate how we act? In order to find out, Zimbardo and his assistants made a single hallway in the basement of Stanford University into an incredibly realistic.
Dude, that's fucking crazy.
And then, once he recruited 24 experimental subjects, he had them randomly assigned into the roles of inmate and guard. And over the course of the experiment quickly descended into abuse and chaos.
This
as
is
the
nuts.
prisoners internalized their oppression, and the guards let the power go to their heads.
Yeah, that's
Even
bad,
Zimbardo
bro.
himself started getting wrapped up in all the excitement, going mad with all the authority that his self-given position of warden had given him. For years, it was considered an unconventional but powerful illustration of what Zimbardo called the Lucifer effect. How rules and power structures can corrupt individual human beings.
Loki, as they explain it more, like, I'm trying to remember. We learned about this in psychology. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it might have been not development. It was either forensic or development psych that we learned this in, because it was like
But
experiments.
behind the scenes, the experiment was a methodological mess.
Yeah, this is
Archival
crazy.
footage later released showed that the guards hadn't actually been driven mad by their roles. Instead, they'd been actively coached to be abusive and hostile by the staff to create more interesting results.
This is
The
crazy.
suffering was real, but the circumstances were set up, making the whole experiment completely invalid.
That's
There's
crazy.
At least one good thing you can say about the Stanford prison
Oh,
experiment.
I didn't even catch the name at first. If I caught the name at first, I probably would have realized that, yeah.
Nobody
I did
loved
that.
it. Well, sadly, you can't say that about our next series of deranged experiments. Number 2. One constant in the history of the human race is that we'll do almost anything to try to ward off death. Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang drank a mercury tincture prepared by his court alchemist to become immortal. He died, by the way. A man named Brian Johnson regularly receives electric shocks to his penis as a part of an extensive pseudoscientific health regimen to keep him
Bro,
young.
what?
But one of the most wackadoo scientific attempts to deny the Reaper his prize exists in the weird world of cryonics. This is the practice of preserving human bodies or body parts in the hope that they'll last until all human ailments, including death itself, can presumably be cured by medical technology. But something truly horrifying can happen if you make a mistake while trying to preserve human bodies for the future. When it's cryonics time, your body will be wrapped up in insulating material and then placed inside a giant metal tube filled full of liquid nitrogen called a dewar. Sometimes a single dewar will contain 4 full corpses around the outside and 5 heads in the middle.
Bro, these things are like real in real life. This, like, I've seen this shit in
Container with a
movies,
vacuum
but
seal, hoping to keep a consistent temperature. These containers will be kept en masse inside an extremely
in cartoons
expensive
and shit.
temperature-controlled morgue. Of course, seeing as we're not in the future, nobody's quite figured out how to revive a cryogenically preserved body, and boy does it get disgusting when it goes wrong. Robert Nelson started one of the earliest cryonics operations in Chatsworth, California back in the 1960s. He initially kept the corpses of his patients frozen on dry ice in a morgue. That was until bad results and customer complaints forced him to transition to the Dewar method. In 1974, Nelson froze a body too quickly, causing the corpuscle to crack. Monstrous mistakes like this were not an isolated incident for Nelson, and later the cooling systems in his operation failed, making the bodies heat up.
Hell fucking no, bro.
Even popped up in Butler, New Jersey. There, a failure in the vacuum seal layer of the freezer caused the bodies to reposition in the Dewar, freezing to each other and to the side of the capsule. The Dewar broke again later, and this time the corpses thawed entirely, rendering them into a thick, repulsive human sludge. What's the difference between that and our next experiment, you might ask? At least in cryonics, the person is already dead first. Number one, unlike a lot of the experiments on this list, the experiment itself here wasn't all that horrifying. It was just another one of the huge range of tests performed under the umbrella of the Manhattan Project, America's nuclear trump card to win World War II. But one little part of those experiments will always live in infamy: the demon core. And with something that has a name that sinister, you know something's bound to go wrong, especially when there was a reckless researcher involved. And that researcher's name was Louis Slotin. Canadian physicist and one of the foremost experts on working with plutonium, Slotin was the natural choice for working on the demon core, a lethal, highly radioactive plutonium deposit inside a metal sphere. Slotin was undeniably extremely skilled and intelligent, but he was also cocky and impulsive. He had a habit of tickling the dragon's tail, pushing the demon core to the very edge of criticality, but being careful not to stray over that line to full meltdown. It involved putting a layer of beryllium called a tamper over the core, lowering it manually with a screwdriver to kickstart a nuclear reaction for the physicists present to study. It was a reaction that could be safely stopped as long as the beryllium tamper never completely covered the plutonium. But on May 21st, 1946, Slotin fumbled the screwdriver, the tamper fell, and a momentary flash of blue light scorched the earth, with Slotin himself taking the lion's share of the criticality burst. Yet not only himself, but several other people who just happened to be in the room at the time.
No way.
Slotin received 2100 rem of neutrons, gamma rays, and X-rays from the blue flash. For context on just how utterly screwed that made him, the threshold for fatality in humans is normally 500 rem. He died 9 days later in excruciating pain from radiation sickness.
Tough,
and he had to be buried in a sealed military casket to prevent radiation leakage.
That's so crazy. That's honestly one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life, bro. Damn, bro. Damn, man. Died on acid. I wonder if his, like, the colleagues that were in the room with him died as well. I mean, they had to if they were that close. And he was at, like, 2100, bro. They probably were not very far off. But damn, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think. And if you want me to react to any more videos like this, man, shout out to Infographic Show for hooking it up. Yeah, man, these are definitely some interesting stories. I think they make for pretty good reactions. So I'll keep bringing them to you as long as you guys want to see it. But you already know what to do, man. If you want me to react to anything, make sure to leave it in the comments, bro. Spam it up. Send it to me. You already know, man. We don't miss any reactions, bro. We post every single day. And yeah, man, that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys tuning in with me. As always, I'll see you in the next video. And I've been